Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Business Candid Conversations with Entrepreneurs. I have today with me a special guest. As a matter of fact, I'll let her introduce herself. The only thing I'll tell you is her name is Laura. Take it away, Laura.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. My name is Laura Boyko, and I'm a registered social worker and psychotherapist. And I have been practicing social work for over 25 years in a variety of environments here in the GTA. And then about 5 years ago, I left corporate and I started my own business, Be Well Therapy. It's a private practice in downtown Whitby, and I serve people virtually across Ontario. A couple years ago, I started a second business called StableWorks, which is equine assisted learning. And that's where I bring horses and humans together to have unique and fun experiences. So that's just a little bit about me and the businesses that I run.
Now that is interesting. So there's a lot to unpack there because this is what I love as a business coach, a business owner. Now I gotta say, maybe I'm biased. I love the fact that you left the corporate world and you started your own, not just one, but two businesses.
Yeah,
So
I love
yeah, go ahead.
I started out in community mental health, working in the community, and moved into the hospital. So I found my way into leadership roles shortly around that time and spent 15 years in leadership and eventually moved into post secondary, where I was sort of on that C suite track. I was on track to take on those higher level director, assistant, dean kind of roles, and thought that that was where I wanted to be. I have a huge passion for women in leadership. I've actually researched that in one of the degrees that I did for the capstone project, and feel very passionate about how we support women in leadership, even to this day, even though I'm not in a formal leadership position in corporate myself anymore. But I also have seen the challenges to that and the challenges to leadership. And I think through COVID, we've gone through a huge shift in how leaders are perceived and how they lead and how we lead our teams. And I had a huge passion for that. I still do. I just feel differently about how I can support leaders and teams in their functioning. And when a few years ago, when I decided to leave that leadership position, and start my own practice, it was about coming back to more face to face, doing the same work that I've always done, but doing it in more face to face where I can see the impacts of my work. And I have the ability to work one on one with individuals, with groups, and having a lot more autonomy over the work that I do choose to do.
Nice. So it sounds like you're really in your lane, your passion, you're loving what you do daily. Not that there are any challenge, there are no challenge to it. There are, of course, challenges to everything in
Yeah.
life, but it seems like, Laura and I met at a networking event. Well, we're part of the same chamber in Whitby, right? The Whitby Chamber is one of them. And I just loved her energy and what she did and the uniqueness in what she did. And it just, I said, I want to have her on my podcast. I want her to be able to share, especially to women, to empower other women so that they too can do what they got to do. You too can do what you got to do to take that leap from the corporate or from what feels uncomfortable and goes against your values of really who you are and step into your true self and help others and serve others through your work. So, Laura, what's been some of your challenges when you started your business?
Yeah, I think the very first challenge was just going, was just starting. And certainly I experienced that. It took a bit of time before I took the leap. I met with someone that I knew that in my circle that was an entrepreneur. And really, truly, I didn't have a lot of people that I knew in my network that were entrepreneurs. I had sort of lived in that corporate, working for someone else, having a pension, benefits, all of that kind of world. And so stepping out into this world of feeling quite untethered, I think you would call it. And that person had said to me, "You have to go before you're ready." And in that moment, I was like, oh, I think I want to throw up a little bit because it was just really scary. Um, about a year passed and I had that same conversation with that individual. And again, it was go before you're ready. And at this point, I was like, I'm ready. Let's go. Certainly still a bit scary, a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty, but there is a sense of knowing, I find, in your gut. Call it a sense of intuition, a sense of just knowing. Confidence comes with more time, and at that point, that's when I was like, that it's time to go, and we'll figure it out. And that's sort of been my motto for a lot of things in my life. Where I was unsure about something, I would say, just show up. I went back to school for social work when I was pregnant with my first child, and I was sitting in the classroom and the professor's like, "When are you due?" And I said, 2 weeks. So I missed a couple weeks of school and I was back in the classroom. And, I ended up having both of my children while doing my undergrad and my graduate degree. And, if I look back now, I'm like, how the heck did I do that? And I think, man, I just remember just telling myself, just show up and you'll figure it out. So I think some of the challenges have been getting started. And then of course, sort of living through those ups and downs and those uncertainty periods, the not knowing, the like, oh God, am I going to fail at this? Should I take this opportunity or this opportunity? And then certainly there's always things that present to you as an entrepreneur. So learning to say no, I think has been really an important lesson. And also surrounding myself with people, with like-minded people. So like yourself, Mark, with other entrepreneurs, and not just people in my field of helping, of therapy, of social work, but other businesses, because I think we can all learn something from each other in different industries. We may be doing different things, but the essence of the business principles, I think, are very transferable.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about having a community. I have a saying that says it's okay to do things on your own, but doing it with others is even better. We can
Yeah.
learn and grow together. And you mentioned that you had to say no at times. You had to learn how to say no at times to things with other business opportunities. Was that kind of thing? Like, is that what you meant?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I said no yesterday to somebody because I do two businesses and I do equine assisted learning, which is a separate business from Be Well Therapy. That work happens quite nationally and internationally. So I'm connected with a lot of people in the States regarding that work. And someone I had connected with had asked me yesterday if I wanted to be a facilitator in their leadership development program using equine assisted learning. And it was such a nice, shiny, exciting experience. I really love the energy of this person. I really love what they're building. But I also have to be mindful of what I'm doing right here, right now. And do I have the bandwidth to step into something else with another person? And even though it sounds fun and exciting, and I would love to be a part of it, consistency is key in business. And I think sometimes, even though we get distracted by something shiny and new, we also have to be able to be mindful of like, what have I already started? And I have to see that through. So sometimes that feels a little bit, repetitive or regular routine, but at the same time, that's what builds the business. So, being consistent. I have lots of clients that, I'll see for a period of time. I won't see them for a year or two. They pop back up again. They call me up. They're like, hey, Laura, can I come and see you? And we have that relationship established already. So they can just sort of hop and go, and I already know their background story, so it makes it easy for them. Certainly I think you've talked about this before, Mark, is how do people stay with you? And I think in my business, people might not always be using me, but I become sort of their trusted circle of helping providers. So some of those challenges have been about, going before you are ready, surrounding yourself with like-minded people, being consistent, staying the course, and not getting too distracted along the way.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. I want to hone in on something a little bit. Can you walk me through how can someone stay the course, be consistent? Walk us through how can someone help themselves do that?
Yeah, I think well, I do enjoy a good vision board. So certainly not necessarily using the tool of a vision board, but some sort of tool that you would map out for yourself to say, okay, for this year or this quarter, this month, this week, this is what I want to do. This is what I need to do, I have to do, or I want to do. I'm a big fan of to-do lists and sort of writing it down, especially if you're someone who has either a lot of energy or can kind of fall into a bit of a, we call hypo state, sort of low mood, low energy, low sort of motivation. And if you're moving from those higher to lower states, that can be a challenge. So putting it down on paper, there is research that tells us that when we think about something and we put it through on a pen and a paper onto paper, that will stick better for us, or we can process better through those thoughts. So writing it down versus even putting it on the computer or a note on your phone. And then I think, being able to block out time, and you might have talked about this with other folks in your circles, but, what's the most productive part of your day? So if you're a morning person, getting up and getting those difficult tasks out of the way first thing in the morning, the ones that take most mental energy, the ones that take least mental energy or don't require as much sort of creativity or out of the box thinking, maybe you park those tasks at the the end of the day. So that might look like a daily kind of thing you're trying to get done. If you're looking for longer term goals, I would say obviously chunking it down using that SMART method of like what's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic within a time frame. What are those kind of things that you need to get done? How are you going to break those down into a bit more manageable pieces, right? We talk about how do you eat an elephant, and you don't, you chunk it down. If we were going to eat an elephant, which I don't think anybody does, but that metaphor of how do you attain a big task, really chunking it down. And then the other thing that I think we can use technology for us, for those of us that have brains that kind of run on a bit of a higher speed, is what we call the Pomodoro method. And so you would actually give yourself like chunks of time. So you might say, I'm going to put a half an hour on my phone and put an alarm, and I'm going to only focus on this task for the next half an hour. And once that half an hour is up, I get to choose whether I want to choose another half an hour or another 15 minutes for that same task, or I'm going to move on to something else. So it allows you to chunk up the time.
Wow. Sorry, what's the name of that?
It's called the Pomodoro method.
Pomodoro. I literally just shared, not knowing that, but I literally just yesterday advised a client of mine. It's kind of sort of at a low moment at the moment to do that, not knowing that exactly thing I did, said
Yeah.
exactly that.
Yeah.
Wow. All
And if
right.
people have little kids that are listening, you can use this method with little kids too. And I used to use it with my kids without knowing that it was really called this either. It's, the 10-second tidy. Like, hey guys, let's clean up the playroom. You put a minute on the clock, and how much can we get done in a minute? Or, 10 minutes. And you make it fun, and you get a lot done in that 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And if there's people who find that they procrastinated about something, there's certain tasks in my job that I find are less stimulating. I will put my clock timer on my watch or my phone for like 10 minutes, and I'll say, I'm going to do 10 minutes of this task. And I actually surprise myself about how much I can get done of that task that I don't prefer in 10 minutes. And then there's a sense of accomplishment. You're like, well, I got all of this done. It only took me 10 minutes, and now I have more time for other things.
Hope you got those tips. You should write that down. Business owners helps us for sure. As business owners, and Laura, you would have realized this, I'm sure, pretty quickly, that when you left the corporate world, you're like, I got all this time.
Yeah.
You create your own schedule, right? Oh, was that a bit of a challenge for you at first?
Yeah, I mean, as a leader, I found that we kind of worked a lot of hours extra and above and beyond the 9 to 5. Anyways, I would be up at 7 in the morning checking for, staff absence calls, or, if there was some kind of an emergency that would happen. At one point, I was looking after a full campus of students, from student athlete of the year to the students that were really struggling mentally. So there was a lot of things that could happen in between there. And I think there was a bit of a misnomer, like when I first started out and I wasn't as busy. I was like, wow, this is great. I have time for a hike on a Wednesday. I have time for coffee with girlfriends. Like, I thought, wow, this is fantastic. But fast forward a few years and like a full thriving practice, two businesses, there isn't a ton of extra time that's downtime. So I think being very mindful about how you use your time is even more important as you grow your business. And being mindful, and this is sort of my jam, is being mindful about how you're taking care of yourself. So where are you finding time for self-care? I found certainly in my role, in my business, when I'm taking care of other people, it's really important for me to set aside time for myself. It's not a selfish thing. It's not a nice to have. It's an absolute, because if I'm not good, if I don't take care of myself, then I'm no good to anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. I found, since I started my coaching practice, that I realized that I needed that more than ever before in my previous business. Because I guess because you're constantly pouring out, to other people, your thoughts, your ideas, the intellectual mind, and it's a lot going out and listening to struggles that people are having in their businesses. Although a lot of it is pretty common generally, certain principles, like, for example, I'm struggling to get leads, or I'm struggling to close sales. I mean, it's the same stuff, but I guess when you're hearing the stories around that, and then you're pouring, you're giving information to that and helping that person to reach their goals. Yeah, it takes a lot out. So I realized that I was wondering, like, why am I getting so drained, like, so quickly, And I realized that's what it is. So it's, yeah, giving a lot out. So I very intentional. And I always say that to my clients too. You have to be intentional about taking time out for yourself. I've experienced burnout in the past, and even a minor stroke in the past, right? Just from go, working like crazy. But you have to be intentional that time for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. People talk about work life balance, and I often say there's no such thing as work life balance. It's work life integration. And so we integrate our work, our personal life into what works for us at the time. So, it's not 50-50, 40 even. Sometimes it's 70-30 or 90-10. And the things we might have times that are really busy in our work and our businesses, and we are working weekends and evenings, and that's just the nature of maybe the cycle of the business or the busy season. But we know then in the summertime it might slow down, and so that's when we get to have a bit more downtime. And so we're integrating throughout the whole year or the whole week versus just each day being a 50-50.
Yeah, love that. And speaking of integration, so you have a second business. Tell us more about that and how you integrated that into your
Yeah.
schedule.
Yeah, exactly. So the second business is called StableWorks, and it is an equine assisted learning business. I am a certified equine assisted learning facilitator and also certified in providing equine psychotherapy, equine assisted psychotherapy. I'm not doing therapy with the horses, I'm doing therapy with humans, but I am assisted by the horses. This is a truly magical modality, I call it, that I have the privilege of working in the space of the horses, who are sentient beings, and also with my clients who I find lots of people tend to come to me because nothing else has worked. And so they found me through usually a web search to do equine therapy at the farm. And it is just a modality that creates shifts that are felt at a sort of, we call it a somatic level. Sometimes it's great for people who don't really have the words to explain or describe their particular experience. And so when we're with the horses, it becomes more of a felt experience versus a verbalized or a cognitive experience, which can be really helpful, healing to people outside of traditional office based therapy, which is what I do most of the time. The second part of that is also equine assisted learning. And this is where we focus more on teamwork, corporate, fun, engaging activities and events where I'll bring people to the farm. And this is where my leadership kind of ties in with equine assisted learning. So I can bring a group of up to 25 people into the arena. I will pair you with a horse, a 1,200-pound beautiful horse, and work through different obstacles and exercises. And as you work through those, you learn about yourself and your teammates, your horse teammate and your human teammates. And what's so cool about that is that I can translate what you're learning in the arena into your office. And so, having led over a dozen teams myself, I can talk about like what happened in your communication in this exercise. Were you successful? What contributed to your success? Or if you weren't successful, what contributed to not being successful? And oftentimes people will say, well, we should have planned a bit more in advance, or we should have listened to everybody, or I didn't communicate well enough to my team before we started. And these are all things that transfer back to the office. But again, because you're doing it in this environment, people feel it. People remember the experience of being with the horse in the arena, trying to navigate through this obstacle. And everybody's kind of tripping on each other because they didn't communicate well enough. And that happens all the time in the office with a project or, a big strategy rollout. And if we're not communicating well enough, then we're going to trip up and we might have some fails and pitfalls. So it's a really cool way to be able to help teams function better, have better role clarity, and also talking about leadership in itself. So this environment is also great for folks that maybe don't take a leadership role in the office. And in the arena with the horse, we can say, hey, you're going to lead the horse right now and everybody else is going to follow you. And sometimes folks are like, well, I'm not a leader, I'm usually just hanging out in the back. But it really gives people an opportunity to try on a new role in a safe environment. And it's beautiful to see people flourish in that environment and sort of be like, hey, I can do this, like this is possible for me. So there's a lot of growth and development that can happen in that environment as well.
Love that correlation. Are you able to sort of paint a picture of what that looks like? Like, say we were in an arena right now and you were sort of to describe what maybe the last one that you just talked about, the leadership. What does that look like?
Yeah. So about a week ago, I co-facilitated an event for the high school SHISM program. So here in Ontario, we have a specialist stream for our high school students. And one of the competencies of that program is leadership. And so we had 29 students from a high school in the Aurora area, I think. And this was a high school of students that were quite high academic. students. And so we brought them to the farm, and I got to talking with some of the kids. There was one young kid that was like, I am not touching that horse. He had no intention of being anywhere near the horse. We had some students that actually had never even been up close with a horse before, or dogs. For some, from a cultural perspective, that wasn't something that they experienced. So it was like lessons in so many different levels. And I had one particular group of students that was working through an exercise. And at some points in the exercises, we will actually remove some of your senses. So we'll blindfold. Some people will get you to put your earbuds in so you can't hear what the team is talking about. We will take away the ability to speak for some people, or some people can't touch anything other than their own teammate. So when we take away some of the senses and we take away people's ability to communicate or hear or listen or see, it really mimics the workplace where not everybody has the same skill sets and strengths and abilities. When they walked through this exercise or worked through this exercise, for some of the exercises, they were just tripping over themselves and they weren't able to navigate it. For others, they were able to go through quite quickly and easily, but they had communicated. A key example of this is one of the exercises at the end of the day is we set up a really long exercise, kind of goes almost the length of the arena. And there's different rails and, sort of a U you have to go through. Well, each team there's two teams that start at either end, and they have to go through as a team with their horse connected by their arms. Some people don't have some of their senses. And each team has to pick up as many balls as they can along the way, but they're actually crossing over each other. So whatever team makes it to the other end of the obstacle and picks up the most balls wins, right? These two teams went through, and one team just sailed through, picked up all the balls, and the other team was at the end and still trying to get through the first third of the obstacle course. They finally crawled to the end of it, barely picked up any of the balls. And I said, what was the challenge here? And they said we needed better communication before we started. They were still talking about who was doing what when the other team was halfway down the obstacle. So it just really highlighted how important communication is in a team environment. And it becomes very apparent in this environment. And just to come full circle, by the end of the day, that young man that said, I am not touching a horse, I looked over and he was leading one of the horses around one of the obstacles. And I'm like, oh, you changed your mind, did you? And he says, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, nice. So part of this therapy, individuals don't ride the horses. They just walk.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Everything is on the ground, unmounted. We don't ride the horses. There is so much that you can do with horses and experience with them. And so even when we're working with the horses, sometimes it's about, lead the horse, come forward. So how do you communicate that with a horse? How do you get them to walk with you? How do you get them to stop? How do you get them to back up? And this is all about what we talk about, pressure and release, when we're working with horses. And that's exactly the same when we're working with humans, is if I need somebody to do something, I'm going to ask them. I might have to say, I need it within a certain time frame. That's a bit of pressure. And then when I say, thank you very much, that's a release, right? Thank you. I appreciate that. And we use the exact same techniques and approaches when we work with horses. So everything is really translatable.
Yeah, that's powerful. I'm very big on communication. A lot of what I teach is about sales, lead generation and sales to our business owners, because without customers, you don't have enough leads coming into your business. You don't really have a sustainable business. So you have to have a flow of customers. And a lot of people struggle with communicating, this is simply what sales is: communicating your value, the value of your product or service in exchange for money. And so a lot of sales folks, business people struggle with that. Could this program help someone that struggles in sales with their communication?
Yeah. Absolutely. And the reason why is because horses are very present focused. And so why I say that and why that's important is a lot of times people think they know what they're communicating. They think, oh yeah, I'm telling the person to come, or I'm telling the person to stop, and they should understand what I'm saying. But we don't get immediate feedback from humans. Oftentimes people will hold back feedback, or they will not give you a clear messaging on what you're saying, or, they'll just agree with you because we don't want to hurt each other's feelings or whatnot. But horses, if a horse doesn't want to come with you, they ain't moving. They're not going to
Mm.
move. And so lots of times I'll see people, sort of standing with a horse and they're trying to lead them, but they're pulling them. So they're actually facing the horse. Well, if you stand right in front of a horse, that's stop zone. That means for them, stop. I'm not going to run into you, right? The horse is like, I'm not going to walk into you. So, but people will stand in front of a horse and say, come on, come on. It's like, the whole adage of like, get out of people's way so they can do their work. And that's the same thing with the horse. Walk on the side, walk in the relationship zone with them, shoulder to shoulder, and move forward. And then the horse will be like, oh, okay, we're going. And the same thing for stopping. If I stand in front of you, the horse might be like, I'm confused. I don't know what you want me to do. But if I stand beside you and I just say, whoa, and maybe pull back on the lead line a little bit, the horse will stop. They're like, oh, we're stopping. And it's not a huge tug pull of war. They're not running away from you. They're paying attention to how you're communicating with them. And so it's immediate feedback about what are you saying. So whether it's with the horse or with your human partners, if you're not communicating clearly, that is immediate feedback in the arena for you.
Yeah. Well, okay, Laura, we're gonna have to talk after this. You got me. My brain's going like crazy now because I think this will be a phenomenal collaboration. Yes, I'm putting it out there, right out there on the Spotify and the YouTube world. Laura and I are going to collaborate about this because I think this is awesome. A horse is not going to move if just because you told it to move. Someone may not buy just because you said this is the best product, this is the best service in the world. I've got Laura. I'm the best therapist. Mark, I'm the best coach. It doesn't matter if you're not communicating it the way that in that case the horse likes to be communicated to, in the way that
Mm-hmm.
your customer likes to be communicated to. Wow, that is powerful. So I think I'm going to take you up on that. We some sort of collaboration, probably set up like a retreat or something of some sort.
And even the other piece too of horses is they have their own personalities too, just like humans do. And so for some horses, it's easy to get them to walk with you. They're like, okay, no problem. And for other horses, they have a bit more personality, let's say, and they're like,
Yeah,
I ain't walking with you unless you clearly communicate with me. You have to show me the way,
yeah.
and then they will come with you. But every horse is different, just like humans. Some are more curious and getting into things. Some have a bit more sass, and it teaches us how do we work with different humans as well, and what do we need to bring out in ourselves, right? I think from a leadership perspective, working with horses is I've seen little kids lead a horse around, so much leadership ability in these young people. And then I've seen grown women who are like, I don't know. And I'm like, step into your power, step into your leadership. And as soon as they change what's inside of them, the horse is like, okay, let's go. Like they have to exude it from themselves in order for those around them to buy into it, to believe that they are a leader. So it's such an internalized experience. And I don't know if people often realize how much what you're saying to yourself inside makes a difference to what happens outside as well.
That's very true. So how do individuals know, like say, a business owner, know when to contact you, or how does one know? Because this
Yeah,
is very unique. This is unique. I've never heard of this until I met you.
I know. I know. I think this is so first and foremost, when to contact me is if you're thinking of booking a team retreat this spring, if you're thinking of something that's unique, that's different. We're not talking about your colors or what color's your parachute or, Myers-Briggs or any of that. That's, I'm way more fun and way more memorable, right? So the horse experiences that I've had personally, they have stuck with me more so than any other team building, team development experience I've had. One other time, I took a team on a team development exercise once and we went dragon boat racing. And I can tell you that experience has stuck with me forever. Take 12 members of your team, put them in a boat in the middle of Frenchman's Bay, and when that boat rocks, we all felt it. And I have
Yeah,
never forgotten what that feels like when we are all out of sync paddling, right? So that was a very felt sense experience. Same thing with this is it's a very felt sense experience. If your team is not functioning well, this helps with role clarity. If your team is struggling with engagement, nothing like putting a horse in the middle of your group to get people fired up. If your team is struggling with leadership and followership and people feeling confident in each other, I will put you in an arena with opportunities to try that on to build those leadership skills. And if you as a leader are wondering, like, I don't know what to do with this team to get them to work better together, take them out of their environment, put them in a new environment. This is where synapses grow and fire in your brain when we put people in new experiences. And that can contribute to developing better relationships between your team members. But we have to shake things up once in a while in order to get a different, you can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. You have to do something different to get a different result. So those would be the main things I would say. And of course, for both businesses, it was somebody said recently, when do people call you? And he said, when bad things happen. And I'm like, ooh, me too. So yeah, for sure. We can definitely do some repairs in a team through equine assisted learning, through either my practice or working with the horses. I work with a lot of folks who have trauma, who have post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, a lot of anxiety or depression, people who have had medical issues, people who have had physical chronic illnesses. I can work with pretty much most individuals' concerns. I don't work with children under 12, and I don't work with children who fall within the spectrum. That's not an area of expertise that I have, but I do work with a lot of first responders, military veterans, people who have experienced some sort of life trauma, and I've traveled all over the States and Canada to get this training. So this isn't something that, I've sort of picked up on the side. I've invested a lot of time and energy in training well and how to do this in a safe way and a competent way for people to have results.
That's awesome. Where can people find you? Are you on social media? Give us all the scoop.
Yeah, I have primarily I have my website, so I have bewelltherapy.ca, and I also have an Instagram account, bewell.therapy. And then StableWorks, you can find me at stableworks.ca and also on Instagram as well, and that is stableworks.eal, equine assisted learning. And both of those talk about the events that we're having. So from Bewell, I have a couple retreats coming up. I have a couples retreat coming up the first weekend of May in Rising Spirit. There's a couple spots left there, so we haven't talked about that today, but I do a lot of couples counseling, and then a women's retreat the following weekend for the day. And then all of our events are listed on StableWorks for the upcoming season. So we're working with a lot of youth this summer and a lot of first responders and military veterans. And we have an upcoming meditation night with the horses this coming Monday, April 28th. And so if you're interested in just getting experience and exposure to horses, the meditation night is a great night to come and be up close to the horses and relax in nature.
Awesome. And I'll be putting Laura's contact info in the show notes and description of this podcast so you can be able to find it there and connect with her. Laura, what would you tell your younger self?
What would I tell my younger self? Well, first and foremost, I would tell my younger self that I am enough. You are enough. You have enough education. You have enough experience. You have enough motivation, energy, resources, support to do what you want to do. Don't let fear dictate your next step. I would say just keep trying new things. The faster we fail, the faster we try what works. And so failure is not, that you're not good enough. It's often, we can say rejection is redirection. And so if something doesn't work and we fail, that's just information that we need to try a different direction or something else. So you are enough. Keep trying, keep showing up. You have everything that you need to do what you want.
Well said. You heard it, friends, here on Behind the Business. This candid, wonderful conversation with Laura. Laura, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I hope you got a lot out of this. Lots of information that Laura has shed. I mean, I could be here all day. Like, I learned so much. There's other questions I wanted to ask you. We got to do a part 2 or something. And I definitely want to do that collaboration. But remember this, just like Laura said, you are enough. Show up. She showed up, and look where she is today. And so if you're feeling down, you're feeling, stressed out, remember, we talked about taking some time for yourself. Be intentional about that, but show up for yourself, show up for your family, show up for your business, show up for your team.